Alright, so today I'm going to go through the human rights and why the police arresting you on an e-scooter is in breach of your human rights. And it just so turns out, for anyone who doesn't know, that the police and judges who swear an oath of allegiance, oath of office for the judge, I believe, and I think he swears another one too. I'll have to put that in the video at some point. And the police swear an oath of allegiance, I believe, to the Queen and all subjects, as in the people, etc., etc. I'll have to go through another video to explain that. But at the moment, I just want to get some information down, get some info out there. So the human rights. So the police and the judges have to favour your human rights over statutory law, and that, unless you're in their eyes, completely violating some kind of statutory law. But even then, the human rights always trump it. Always have more power over it, because breach of human rights is a lot more important, and it's more to do with I want to say the natural laws and the common laws and all that. I'd say it's more closer. If we was to put it on a scale, I'd say human rights are closer to common laws and all that than statutory law, for example, because statutory law is just hundreds of thousands of bloody rules, and human rights, there's not as much of them, and they're basics, like to do with your freedoms and stuff. Human rights is like the Constitution of America and things, or the European Convention of Human Rights, or the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. But anyway, let's just go through a few of the things where, if you was to go court or get arrested or anything, this is the argument what you could use in my eyes. Because if your human rights are being breached, then they've got to take your side in a court of law. But anyway, let's get into it. So first off, let's start with the European Convention of Human Rights. So in Article 2, it says, so the European Convention of Human Rights, on Article 2, it says the freedom of movement. It says, everyone lawfully within the territory of a state shall within that territory have the right to liberty of movement and freedom and choose to his own residence. Just on that bit alone, where it says within the territory, so but for example, in this case, it would be within the UK, the territory or state. You have the right to liberty. Liberty, I believe, means freedom. It can mean other things in other ways, depending on how you look into it. But I think the normal English meaning is freedom. So you have the freedom of movement within the UK. So I will interpret that as, traveling. So, if you know about the traveling versus driving's a commercial term, which is associated with your person. And obviously, if you're a human being, if you declare yourself a human being, then you're traveling, then you're not driving, So if they in court try to say to me, "Oh, you're driving," I'll be like, "No, I was traveling." And if they question me further on that, I'll say, "Hang on a minute, I have the human right under the European Convention of Human Rights, the freedom of movement to the freedom of movement within this country, and that comes under traveling in my eyes." That's what I was going to say if it got to that. So there's one human right that it's in breach of, just by a police officer arresting you on an e-scooter, that because you're doing it lawfully. It says as long as you're doing it lawfully, and in this case they could interpret that whether you're following the statutory laws or not. And in my eyes, because e-scooters are not yet put into statutory law, and there is no definition of an e-scooter as a motor vehicle like they claim, you are doing it lawfully because you've done nothing wrong, So that's Article 2 of European Convention of Human Rights. There's one human right that's in breach of. Let's have a look here. Okay, Article 3, prohibition, the European Convention of Human Rights. All these articles I'm saying will be based on those at the moment. So Article 3, prohibition of torture. No one shall be subjected to torture or to inhumane or degrading treatment or punishment. In my eyes, if you're being stopped on the road when you're on an e-scooter and you don't want to give it up and they've arrested you, like what happened to me, they've tangled you up. And when I mean that, I mean like grabbed you up, arrested you, twisted you around or whatever, put you onto the floor. In my eyes, that's degraded treatment. So there's another human right that's basically being violated. Let's have a look. Right to life, I'll interpret that to just like be able to enjoy your life, you know. That's section 1, rights and freedoms, article 2. The right to life, I'd interpret that as just like, you know, just it comes in my eyes that's like an umbrella term for like freedom of movement, you know, like comes under that, like you have the right to just live your life, you know, without like being bothered if you're doing it lawfully. And again, you're not breaking any laws because there's no laws surrounding e-scooters at the moment, so you're still doing it lawfully. So far that's like 3 human rights that have been breached. And this is the main, this is a oh no, this isn't the one I was going to be talking about, but it's good nonetheless. European Convention of Human Rights still. Article 13, the right to an effective remedy. Anyone whose rights and freedoms as set forth in this convention are violated shall have an effective remedy before a national authority, now notwithstanding that the violation has been committed by persons acting in an official capacity. So basically saying that if you haven't willingly or knowingly broke any one of their laws, then you should not be punished for breaking a law. And in my eyes, because the laws are not clear, and laws have to be clear on anything, any kind of law has to be clear because people need to know where they go if they're going to go wrong and how to avoid going wrong, if that makes sense. Like obviously, it wouldn't be fair if they chucked out a load of vague laws that could punish you to death, and then you break one of them laws unknowingly because it's not clear, it's not obvious. And you get punished to death, it's going to be unfair, right? Yeah, so it says you have the right to an effective remedy, as in like if you get arrested and you go to court and they interpret that you haven't like violated any laws or anything, and there's no laws being created in a way, and you're knowingly in your capacity, knowingly like you didn't do anything wrong, and then you have a right for them to like, you know, give you a remedy, as in like in court, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, a remedy would be like as in like, you know, not punish you for what you're doing and compensate you in a way for your troubles. So that's Article 13. Let's just keep going because I want to keep this video short. By the way, you can look up European Convention of Human Rights whenever you want, and you can look through these yourself. There's plenty more that they're probably in violation of. These are just the main ones I was going to say in court because under pressure of like not feeling like I have enough time to explain myself in court, I just highlighted the main ones. So this one, prohibition of human rights, Article 17. Prohibition of abuse of rights. Nothing in this convention shall be interpreted as implying for any state, group, or person any right to engage in any activity or perform any act aimed at the destruction of any of the rights and freedoms set forth herein, or at their limitation to a greater extent than is provided for in this convention. So I'll interpret that as basically the judges and the police are not allowed to abuse your human rights, as in they're not allowed to favour statutory rules and laws over your human rights. Let's just keep going. European Convention of Human Rights, Article 6, right to a fair trial. This is the main one. In the determination of his civil rights and obligations of any criminal charge against him, everyone is entitled to a fair and public hearing within a reasonable time by an independent and impartial tribunal established by law. Judgment shall be pronounced publicly, but the press and the public may be excluded from all or part of the trial in the interests of morals, public order, or national security in a democratic society. That's a bit of a joke in a way, you know, like, so basically so you don't shed bad light on them if things go wrong. where the interests of juveniles or the protection of the private life of the party so require. Yeah, all right, cool, whatever. Or to the extent strictly necessary in the opinion of the court in the special circumstances where publicity would prejudice the interests of justice. Everyone charged with a criminal offence shall be presumed innocent until proven guilty according to law. So everyone knows what it's like. You've been arrested. They kind of assume that you're already guilty. So they're already like in violation of that, in a way you could interpret that. Also, right to a fair trial, there's other details, as in like you have to be provided with the evidence and facilities. And in my case, this is why my case got dropped, because what happened is, for those of you who don't know, when I got arrested, they didn't send me and set me a court date. They didn't send me any of the footage or any of the evidence, anything regarding my case. They didn't send me it. I don't know if that's because I didn't sign anything in the police station. I didn't do an interview in the police station. Like, I just stayed silent. I don't know if there's like some kind of legal things where, like, because I technically wasn't there because I didn't sign anything. I don't know if that's the reason why they didn't send me anything. I don't know if it's a little, a little crack in the system, like a little trick to get around it. Or if it was where the CPS probably maybe reviewed my evidence, saw me on camera because they had body footage camera of me, clearly stating that there's no laws and I haven't broken no law on e-scooters, and then they basically violated my human rights by like going against that and arresting me and imprisoning me and for 10 hours in a cell. And maybe the CPS looked at it and thought, you know what, if we send him that and he goes ahead with trial, because they already knew I was representing myself, so technically I can get around the attaching myself to my person if I really wanted to, if I wanted to go that far, and I could be demanded to be treated as a human being in the court in a way, if you know what I'm saying, which means my natural laws and my natural human rights are reserved in a way. So knowing that I was representing myself, I was basically in the right and I'd done nothing wrong. Maybe they looked at the footage and thought, you know what, don't send him it because we don't want him to go to trial. We don't want him to win and then it being publicized everywhere, and then it will ruin their campaign about how they're trying to extort people and monetize scooters, because if everyone found out that people were going to trial and winning, then everyone would be like, hang on a minute, maybe they're not illegal at all. So that's why I have a feeling why they didn't send me my evidence. And let me get back to the point. Right to a fair trial, you have to be given the facilities and the evidence to prepare for your trial. The defendant has to be given them facilities. So, for example, if you get arrested and they've got any evidence on you that they're going to use in court, they have to send you it before court so you can review it, and it gives you a chance to defend yourself. And because I didn't do that, that's the reason why my case got dropped, because I was in trial waiting to go ahead, and they asked me if I'd seen this footage. I said no. I'd proved that they hadn't sent me it because I actually requested something myself, and they responded to me that they couldn't give it to me. They didn't offer me it, but they were trying to do this. What they were trying to do is, they didn't mention these words, but they were alluding to the idea that they was going to adjourn the trial, so it gives me time to see the footage. So when I come back, then they can go ahead. But I seized the opportunity and I was like, no, I want to resolve this today. I demanded it was settled today because I'd already been to court and this is my trial now. I want it sorted. You know what I'm saying? I demanded that. And, well, politely I did. So they had to go ahead. And because they couldn't go ahead without me seeing that footage, they would have been in violation of my right to a fair trial. So just them nearly being in violation of one of my human rights, they had to drop the case. So just imagine if the trial did go ahead and I showed them all the evidence proving that they'd violated like six or so of my human rights, I definitely would have won in my eyes. So that's the European Convention of Human Rights. There's different articles and declarations and constitutional paperwork to do with the human rights, and you'd have to, they're all pretty much the same across the board. There's like the main things, right to a fair trial, freedom of movement, stuff like that, just to be basically treated like a normal human being. So they're all kind of similar across the board, but different countries have slightly different ones that make it a bit easier for you to navigate. So if you were like, there's Universal Declaration of Human Rights, what basically just apply to everyone in the world, I believe. Then there's European Convention of Human Rights, which is like Europe. Then you got obviously the Constitution, which is the US. You've also got the Human Rights Act, which is the UK. But yeah, you're better off getting examples of a few of these, because different ones have different amount of detail. All right, so next is Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Hang on, I'm just going to cut the video because I'll carry on with another video.